The office building was quiet, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. The sun had set hours ago, and the world outside was wrapped in darkness. Inside, the building stood tall, illuminated by the soft glow of fluorescent lights. Most of the employees had long gone home, but not everyone. John, the janitor, was busy at work, mopping the floors of the sprawling office. The sound of the mop scraping the floor echoed in the otherwise silent space. He had done this routine countless times, night after night, cleaning up after the workers who would come back the next day to use the same desks, leave behind the same messes. But tonight, there was a new tension in the air. Something felt different. The door to the CEO's office opened with a soft click. John barely glanced up, but he heard the unmistakable click of expensive shoes on the polished tiles. He continued mopping, eyes focused on the floor. "Well, well," a voice sneered from behind him. It was Derek Collins, the CEO. His voice was sharp and cutting, filled with arrogance. "What's it like?" "Huh. Cleaning up after all of us. Must be nice to not have to think about all the decisions that matter, all the responsibility." John didn't respond. He just kept mopping, his movements slow and methodical. "You know, I sometimes wonder how people like you sleep at night," Derek continued, stepping closer. "You have no ambition, no future. You're stuck in that rut forever, and you'll never get out. You'll never be like us." John paused, the mop resting against the floor. He could feel Derek's presence behind him, the CEO's words cutting through the quiet like a knife. But John didn't flinch. He simply took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a brief second, and then returned to his work. Derek's laughter echoed through the empty office. "You really think you'll make it anywhere? Look at you. You're just a janitor," he scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Why bother? You'll always be invisible." John could feel the sting of the words, but he knew better than to let them affect him. He had heard them all before, every insult, every belittling comment, but this was different. This wasn't just a man mocking him. This was someone who believed, truly believed, that people like John didn't deserve to dream. They didn't deserve success. With a quiet resolve, John finished mopping the floor in silence. "Isn't it lonely at the bottom?" Derek asked, his tone taunting. "Don't you ever wonder what it's like up here in the real world? You might want to try thinking about it sometime. But I guess that's too much for a guy like you." John finally finished the area he had been working on. He stood up straight, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. He didn't look at Derek. Instead, he moved on to the next section of the office. Derek watched him for a moment, then shook his head, muttering something under his breath. "You know," Derek said, his voice a little less harsh now, "you could at least smile once in a while. Life might not be so bad for you if you did." John said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than any words could. As Derek turned to leave, John continued his work, the mop swishing rhythmically across the floor. It was just another night, just another task. But in the quiet of the office, something within John was changing. He didn't know it yet, but every word Derek had said was only pushing him closer to something bigger than he could imagine. The night air was cool as John walked down the quiet street, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. He had finished his work for the night, and now it was time to return to his small apartment. The walk was long, but it gave him time to think. His apartment was nothing like the offices he cleaned, small, cramped, and lacking in many of the comforts others took for granted. The walls were plain, the furniture simple and worn. There was no luxury here, no sign of wealth or success. But there were things that mattered. He unlocked the door to his apartment and stepped inside, the familiar smell of old wood and cleaning supplies greeting him. The light from the small lamp on the side table flickered slightly as he closed the door behind him. He set his cleaning supplies down by the door, then walked over to his desk in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was his space. Books were stacked neatly in one corner, business books, motivational guides, and a few about personal growth. John ran his fingers over their worn spines, each one a reminder of the hours he spent after his shift, reading and learning about the world beyond his job. His laptop sat on the desk, open to an online course about business management. He had been working on it for weeks, taking small steps toward building a future for himself. A future where he didn't have to scrub floors for a living. John sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen. His mind wandered back to Derek's words. "You'll never get out," the CEO had said. "You'll always be invisible." A bitter laugh escaped John's lips as he stared at the laptop. Was it true? Would he always be stuck in this cycle, cleaning up after people like Derek? Was that his fate? Or could he change things? His eyes moved from the screen to the window, where the city lights twinkled in the distance. The The world was so much bigger than this small apartment, so much more than the building he cleaned each night. He could feel it. There was something more waiting for him, something he couldn't quite reach but knew was out there. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, the weight of the day settling in his bones. But as he rested, he made a decision. He wouldn't let Derek's words define him. He wouldn't let the smallness of his life stop him from reaching for something greater. There had to be more, and he would find it. John stood up, walked over to his desk, and opened the business book nearest to him. He had made the first step by learning. Now it was time to take the next step. He was tired of being invisible. He was ready to show the world who he really was. With that thought in mind, he opened his laptop again, the soft glow illuminating his face. He wasn't going to let anyone's words stop him. He would work, learn, and fight for the life he knew he deserved. John's routine hadn't changed much over the past few months. He still worked the same late-night shifts, cleaning the office building, but there was something different now, a fire inside him that refused to be extinguished. As the mop swished across the floor, he was no longer just thinking about cleaning. His mind raced with ideas, new strategies, and possibilities for a different life. Every day after finishing his work, he would head back to his small apartment and pick up where he left off. The laptop in the corner of the room, always on, was his gateway to a new world. Business courses, investment guides, leadership podcasts. John had thrown himself into learning, devouring information about business, finance, marketing, and everything else that could help him break free from the life that seemed so preordained. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, John sat down at his desk, rubbing his tired eyes. The screen glowed softly in the dark room as he clicked on another video. The basics of marketing, how to sell anything, flashed across the screen. As he watched, he scribbled notes in a small notebook. His pen moved quickly across the pages, a flurry of ideas taking shape. The course was more advanced than he expected, but he was determined to understand. It wasn't easy. The words sometimes blurred together, and the technical jargon felt like a foreign language. But John wasn't the kind to back down. He rewound the videos, replayed them, and paused frequently to research terms he didn't understand. He also talked with his friends from time to time. "Man, you're always busy," his buddy Tim had commented one day at the local diner where John worked another side job. "You don't even have time for a beer anymore." John shrugged. "I've got a lot on my plate." Trying to learn something new. Tim looked at him with a smirk. "Something new? Like what? You cleaning up your future, or just cleaning floors?" John smiled faintly but didn't say anything. He had learned long ago not to let people's opinions sway him. It's all about learning, man. You gotta know how to sell, how to market yourself. "Sounds like a lot of work," Tim replied, shaking his head. "But hey, if you ever make it big, don't forget about me." John couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. "I won't forget anyone. I'll make sure I help out everyone who believed in me." That conversation stuck with him. He knew it wasn't just about money, it was about proving to himself that he could do it. But the journey was far from easy. He spent hours each night watching videos, reading articles, and practicing what he learned. He taught himself how to create ads, how to build a brand, and how to pitch his ideas. Slowly but surely, John began to see results, though small. The effort, though exhausting, was starting to pay off. He had learned the basics of running a business, and the more he learned, the more confident he became. At the same time, he was getting better at investing. One evening, John sat in front of his laptop, scrolling through an online stock market simulator. He had been practicing on it for weeks, testing different strategies and tracking the progress of his mock investments. It wasn't real money yet, but John was gaining experience. His small wins kept him motivated. It wasn't just about learning for John. He was testing, experimenting, and building himself up for the real thing. And little by little, he started seeing opportunities that hadn't been there before. One late evening, as John was finishing up his shift, something clicked. He had been thinking for days about starting a small business, something that could help him get his foot in the door. He needed to act now. His first idea was simple but effective. He could start a delivery service. John had seen how people in his neighborhood struggled to get things done. Whether it was a quick errand, groceries, or small packages, there was always someone in need of a fast delivery. It seemed like a perfect side business that didn't require much upfront investment. John grabbed a pen and started sketching out a plan. "Okay, I'll need a website, some flyers, a few contacts for deliveries," he muttered to himself, scribbling down ideas. His heart raced as he realized he was finally taking the first step. The next day, after cleaning another office building, he went to the local print shop and ordered a batch of flyers. He designed the flyers himself, using a free online tool to create a simple but professional-looking ad for his delivery service. Fast, reliable delivery, get your packages delivered today. The flyer was clear and to the point. He had learned how to market, and he wasn't about to waste that knowledge. He spent the next week handing out the flyers around his neighborhood, speaking to local businesses, and promoting his service. At first, the response was slow. People didn't know who he was, and there were many other delivery services around. But John wasn't discouraged. He kept going, refining his approach, learning from each interaction. His first customer came a week later, an elderly woman who needed help picking up her groceries. John was nervous but determined. He went to her house, picked up the order, and delivered it to her. The smile on her face when he handed her the bags was worth every second of effort. It wasn't always easy. There were days when John barely broke even, and others when he had to deal with difficult clients or delayed shipments. But every small victory gave him the courage to keep moving forward. He was building something real, something that could change his life. John also had to manage his time carefully. With his night job, the side business, and his ongoing education, there were days when he barely slept. He often found himself juggling multiple tasks, trying to balance his responsibilities. "Hey John, you okay?" Tim asked one evening, noticing the dark circles under John's eyes. "You've been working non-stop lately. Don't burn yourself out." John smiled, though he was exhausted. "I'll be fine. Just need to keep pushing." There were setbacks, too. He had technical problems with his website, something simple, but it took him hours to fix. He also had a hard time figuring out how to scale his business, but each failure was a lesson, and John wasn't about to give up. Through persistence, he started building a loyal customer base. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood, and soon people were calling him for deliveries, asking for his service. He was growing his business one customer at a time. John knew that this was just the beginning. He wasn't there yet, but he had taken the first steps, and that was more than he had ever done before. He was no longer just a janitor, he was a business owner in the making. The corporate world that once seemed like a well-oiled machine for Adam Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Call Enterprises, was starting to show cracks. What had once been a thriving business was now facing a sharp decline. Clients were pulling back, revenue was dwindling, and his once loyal team was starting to question his decisions. It all started with a series of bad calls during a crucial expansion phase. Adam had been too focused on chasing bigger profits, ignoring the foundation that had built his company. His obsession with growth led him to make hasty moves, such as investing in high-risk projects without proper research. Meanwhile, his leadership style had turned more abrasive. He had become dismissive of his employees' concerns, making it clear that his way was the only way. In a high-pressure board meeting, Adam sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his team of executives. The air was thick with tension as the numbers on the screen showed a steep decline in profits. His CFO, Rebecca, spoke up, her voice tense but calm. "Adam, the numbers are clear. We need to reconsider our strategy, scale back some of our riskier investments. We're bleeding money, and it's only going to get worse if we keep this up." Adam clenched his fists, his face growing red with frustration. "I don't need a lecture on strategy, Rebecca. I know what I'm doing. The market will turn around. We just need to be patient." Rebecca tried to remain calm. "But Adam, the employees are getting restless. We're losing talented people, and morale is at an all-time low. The layoffs we had last month enough." Adam interrupted, his voice sharp. "I don't want to hear it. We're sticking with the plan. This is the price of success." As the meeting dragged on, Adam's decisions grew more erratic. He ignored sound advice and clung to the hope that things would improve on their own. But the cracks were becoming more visible. Behind closed doors, his employees were growing frustrated, wondering how long they could stay at a company led by someone who refused to acknowledge the looming disaster. Meanwhile, outside the boardroom, Adam's personal life mirrored his professional struggles. The lavish lifestyle he once enjoyed, fancy cars, expensive suits, and a penthouse apartment, began to lose its appeal. The stress was taking a toll on him, and his health was deteriorating. He had become a shell of the confident, successful CEO he once was. In contrast, the janitor John was starting to see the fruits of his labor. While Adam's company spiraled, John's small delivery service was picking up momentum. The hustle was still real, but each day brought him closer to something bigger. His side business was gaining more clients, and word of mouth was spreading in his community. Every small success kept his spirits high, fueling his ambition to keep moving forward. As John cleaned the floors late at night, he couldn't help but notice how far he had come. He wasn't where he wanted to be yet, but he was making progress. His confidence grew as he made smarter decisions for his business, and he was slowly moving away from the janitor's cart that he had once pushed with his head down. He was beginning to see himself as a business owner, not just a worker. Months passed and John's business continued to grow steadily. The day came when he finally made the decision he had been working toward for so long. He was going to quit his janitor job. It wasn't an easy choice. The stability of his janitor job had always been a safety net, but John knew that it was time to take the next step. He handed in his resignation, his hands shaking slightly as he wrote out the words. "Thank you for the opportunity," he wrote on the paper, "but I am moving on to new ventures." As John walked away from the janitor's closet for the last time, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The small delivery service he had started had turned into something much bigger. He had expanded his client base and was even looking into hiring his first employee. Business meetings, once a distant dream, were now part of his daily routine. John had learned the art of negotiation, how to pitch his ideas to clients, and how to manage the growing demands of his business. It wasn't always smooth sailing. He had his share of failures, but each setback taught him something valuable. At the same time, John was starting to invest wisely. He had put his learning to work, buying stocks in companies that he had researched thoroughly. Though he wasn't a millionaire yet, his investments were paying off, and his side business was turning into a legitimate company. One day, John sat at his desk, looking over his financial reports. His small business was no longer a side hustle. It had grown into something that could sustain him fully. He was finally able to move out of his small apartment and into a modest home in a better neighborhood. He still remembered the cramped apartment he used to live in, and though it was a small step, he couldn't help but feel proud of how far he had come. The growth of his business was undeniable. John now employed a small team, and he had even started attending business conferences to expand his network. He felt like a different person, more confident, more determined, and with a clear vision of where he was heading. One of the most significant moments in John's journey came when he hired his first employee, someone he could trust to help him manage the workload. It was a big step, one that showed that his business was no longer a one-man show. John had learned the importance of leadership and delegation, and he was starting to embrace the responsibilities of running a company. The janitor who had once been humiliated by the CEO was now leading a growing business. He had proven to himself that hard work, perseverance, and learning could change his life. And he wasn't done yet. John knew that his journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Meanwhile, Adam Caldwell's company continued to struggle. The cracks in his leadership were widening, and his once thriving empire was crumbling. The contrast between the two men was stark. One was losing control, while the other was taking charge of his own destiny. Adam Caldwell's empire was crumbling, and he was too proud to admit it. His company, once the shining star of the corporate world, had turned into a sinking ship. Employees were leaving in droves, frustrated by his leadership and lack of direction. Investors were pulling out, seeing the writing on the wall long before Adam did. The weight of failure pressed down on him, but his ego refused to acknowledge it. The crisis started small, a missed deadline here, a client complaint there, but it quickly spiraled into something much worse. Adam tried to mask the cracks, putting on a facade of confidence during meetings, but the board of directors was becoming increasingly restless. At an emergency board meeting, Adam tried to salvage the situation. He slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising in frustration. "We're not giving up now. We can turn this around. We just need more time, more investment." Rebecca, the CFO, spoke cautiously. "Adam, we've been over this. We can't keep running on empty. The investors are pulling out. We need to cut our losses before it's too late." Adam's face turned red with anger. "I don't need you telling me what to do. I built this company. I know what's best." He refused to listen to reason. His team had been advising him to streamline operations, let go of underperforming departments, and focus on core strengths, but Adam was determined to stay the course. His pride had become his biggest obstacle. His phone rang incessantly, calls from investors, angry emails, and messages from clients demanding answers. But Adam ignored them all, too caught up in his own desperation. He stormed through the office, his mind racing with thoughts of failure. A day later, in a desperate move, he called a meeting with his top executives. "We need to make a bold move," he said. "If we don't act now, we'll be out of business in a matter of weeks. I'm thinking of expanding into new markets, taking bigger risks." The executives exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen this before. Adam's obsession with expansion had led to reckless decisions. But no one dared to challenge him. Adam's ego was too fragile, and he had a way of shutting down anyone who disagreed with him. Meanwhile, outside the confines of the corporate world, John was flourishing. His side business had grown beyond his expectations, and the skills he had taught himself were starting to pay off. John had not only learned the mechanics of running a business, but he had also gained the strategic thinking that Adam lacked. He had been watching Adam's company from afar, knowing that something big was about to happen. John had made a calculated decision. As Adam's company faltered, he saw an opportunity. He had saved enough money, gained enough knowledge, and now had the means to step up and make an offer Adam couldn't refuse. The moment of reckoning for Adam was near. The deal was about to unfold. John, the janitor turned entrepreneur, had made the decision to buy Caldwell Enterprises. It was a bold move, but one he had been preparing for. Over the past months, he had been watching the company's every move, studying their weaknesses, and building his own strength. He knew that the time had come. John had already secured the necessary funds, his business thriving enough to make a move that once seemed impossible. He walked into his lawyer's office with a sense of purpose, ready to finalize the purchase. The paperwork was in front of him, the signatures waiting to be signed. As he looked over the documents, he felt a sense of calmness settle over him. This was his moment. The final negotiation would take place in the same boardroom where Adam had once stood tall as the CEO. But now it was John who would walk in with the papers, ready to take control. The day of the big meeting arrived, and Adam, ever the egomaniac, was still in denial. He had tried every last-ditch effort to salvage his company, but deep down he knew the end was near. The investors were gone, his executives were preparing to leave, and his employees were quietly searching for new opportunities. Adam's pride had led him here, unable to face the reality that his empire was falling apart. In the midst of his panic, Adam received a call from his lawyer. "Mr. Caldwell," the lawyer said, "we've received an offer. A very serious offer. A buyer is interested in acquiring Caldwell Enterprises." Adam sat up straight, his heart pounding in his chest. "Who's the buyer? I don't have time for games." The lawyer hesitated. "It's a man named John Carter. He's the owner of a small business that's been growing rapidly. He's made a very competitive offer." Adam's mind raced. "John Carter? Who does he think he is, coming into my territory? I built this company from the ground up. I won't sell to him." But the truth was undeniable. The company's future was bleak, and Adam had no choice but to entertain the idea. He reluctantly agreed to meet with John. Hours later, Adam stood in his office, pacing nervously. His thoughts were scattered, and his usual confidence was nowhere to be found. The door creaked open, and in walked John, carrying the papers that would seal the deal. The contrast between the two men could not have been more stark. John walked with a calmness and confidence that Adam had once possessed. But now it was Adam who seemed anxious, desperate, and on edge. John held out the papers, his voice steady. "I'm here to buy your company, Adam. I'm offering you a fair price." Adam's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "You're out of your mind if you think I'm going to sell to you. I don't need you or your money." John didn't flinch. "I'm not asking for your approval, Adam. I'm offering you a way out. You've lost everything because you couldn't listen. Now, it's time for a new direction." Adam's face turned crimson with anger. "You're not even qualified to run a company like this. You were just cleaning the floors not long ago." John took a deep breath. "You're right. I did clean floors. But I've learned more about business in the last year than you ever will. I know what it takes to succeed, and I've built something from the ground up. You've had your chance, Adam." The tension in the room was palpable. Adam could feel the walls closing in around him. This was not the power struggle he had imagined. In a final act of desperation, Adam slammed his fist on the desk. "You're making a huge mistake, John," he spat. "You have no idea what you're getting into." But John wasn't fazed. He slid the papers across the desk toward Adam, his calm demeanor unwavering. "Sign the papers, Adam. It's over." Adam stared at the papers, the weight of his failure sinking in. He could feel the years of success slipping through his fingers. With a defeated sigh, he picked up the pen, signing his name to a deal that would change everything. John walked out of the office with a sense of finality. He had done it. He had taken control, and in the process had turned the tables. Adam Caldwell, the once untouchable CEO, was now a has-been. His empire was no more. As John exited the building, he felt the weight of the world lift off his shoulders. He had achieved something that seemed impossible just a year ago. He was no longer the janitor. He was the owner of Caldwell Enterprises. The boardroom was silent as John stepped through the door, his presence commanding attention. His once humble demeanor had transformed into that of a leader, calm and confident. The room, full of high-ranking executives and board members, turned their heads in shock as he entered. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. John walked to the center of the room, standing tall, his eyes focused. Adam Caldwell, still reeling from the humiliation of losing his company, was seated at the head of the table. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. John didn't waste any time. He had waited long enough. With a steady voice he addressed the room. "I'm the new CEO of Caldwell Enterprises," John said, his words clear and firm. "I've bought this company. It's mine now." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Adam's eyes widened in disbelief, unable to process the magnitude of the moment. He had fought so hard to build his empire, yet here he was, reduced to a spectator. His grip tightened on the armrest of his chair, but no words came. It was as if his voice had been taken from him. John continued, his voice unwavering. "I've worked as a janitor for years, cleaning your floors, handling the smallest tasks. But that didn't stop me. I studied, I learned, and I built something of my own. While you were busy making reckless decisions, I was planning, I was growing." Adam stood up, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You can't do this. This is my company. I built this from the ground up. You have no idea what it takes to lead a business like this." John looked at him with a calmness that only someone who had faced and overcome adversity could possess. "I may not have had your title, Adam, but I had something you didn't, humility. I was never too proud to learn, to listen, and to grow. You thought you were above it all, but now look where you are." Adam's fists clenched, his pride shattered. "I'm the one who made this company what it is. You're nothing but a janitor. A man who cleans up after others. What do you know about running a business like this?" John smiled slightly. "You think because I cleaned your floors I was beneath you. That was my job, yes. But it wasn't who I was. And it's not who I am now." He turned to the board members who had been watching this exchange in stunned silence. "I'm here now. And things are going to change. I won't treat anyone like you treated your employees, Adam. I won't ignore their voices or push them down. I'll build a team of people who respect each other and work together toward success." Adam was speechless. His attempts to salvage his dignity fell flat. He had no choice but to step aside, his empire slipping from his grasp. John took a deep breath and walked toward the head of the table where Adam had once stood. He didn't need to say anything more. His actions had spoken louder than any words could. As John sat down at the head of the table, the weight of his new role settled over him. He wasn't just the CEO of a company now, he was a symbol of resilience, of hard work, and of never giving up. He had risen from the bottom, and now he was at the top. The transformation in Caldwell Enterprises began almost immediately under John's leadership. He wasn't just focused on the company's financial success, he was focused on its people. The culture of the office shifted dramatically, from one of fear and intimidation under Adam's reign to one of mutual respect and collaboration. John's first act as CEO was to address the employees in the company's main hall. The staff had been waiting for the new leader to arrive, unsure of what to expect. They had all seen Adam's leadership fail, and many were skeptical about what John could bring to the table. As John walked into the room, the staff stood, unsure of whether they should applaud or remain silent. But John simply smiled and gestured for them to sit down. "I know that you've all been through a lot," John began, his voice calm and compassionate. "I'm not here to make promises or tell you everything will be perfect right away. What I can promise is that I'll treat every single one of you with the respect you deserve. We're going to work together to turn this company around." There was a moment of silence, and then a few employees exchanged looks. Something about John's words felt genuine. He wasn't making empty promises. He meant what he said. John continued, "We're going to start by listening. I want to know what you think is wrong with the company. What needs to change? What do you need to succeed? Your voices matter." It was a simple statement, but it made all the difference. The employees felt heard for the first time in years. Under Adam's leadership, their concerns had been ignored, dismissed, or ridiculed. But with John at the helm, they felt like part of a team again. Over the next few weeks, John worked tirelessly to restructure the company. He held meetings with every department, listening to their concerns and offering solutions. He encouraged collaboration and open communication, creating an environment where employees felt empowered to take initiative. One of the first changes John implemented was to promote a few deserving employees who had been overlooked under Adam's leadership. He believed in giving people opportunities to grow and succeed, not just rewarding those who played politics or kissed up to the boss. This move earned him the respect and admiration of his team. As the company's culture shifted, the financials began to follow suit. John made smart, calculated decisions. He focused on streamlining operations, cutting unnecessary costs, and investing in areas that would yield the highest returns. He didn't rush into risky ventures like Adam had. Instead, he built the company's foundation carefully, ensuring that every step was well thought out. The results were evident. Within months, Caldwell Enterprises began to show signs of recovery. Revenues slowly increased, employee satisfaction was at an all-time high, and clients began to return. The company's reputation, once damaged by poor leadership, was now on the mend. John's leadership was a stark contrast to Adam's. He wasn't driven by ego or pride, he was driven by the desire to build something lasting, something that would provide opportunities for others. As the company grew, so did John. He became a true leader, someone who inspired others to believe in themselves and in the company's future. Under John's guidance, Caldwell Enterprises slowly but steadily regained its place in the market. Employees felt valued and motivated, and the company culture shifted from one of fear to one of trust and collaboration. John's story of resilience, hard work, and determination had become the heart of the company's new identity. The final image of this scene shows John standing outside the company building, looking up at the logo on the wall. It was the same logo he had once seen as a janitor, from the outside looking in. Now it represented his journey, a journey of transformation, of overcoming obstacles, and of making the impossible possible. As John entered the building, ready to face the day's challenges, he knew one thing for certain: he had earned this. This was his company now, and he wasn't going to let it slip through his fingers. Months passed, and the once confident CEO, Adam Caldwell, found himself in a different place, a quieter, smaller office in the company he had once ruled. The lavish office he had sat in, filled with power and pride, was now a distant memory. Adam had been demoted after John's takeover. The lavish perks, the top-tier salary, the status, everything had crumbled. But as Adam sat at his new desk, which was far more modest than the one he had once claimed as his own, he couldn't help but reflect. Looking at the photographs on the wall of the company's early days, Adam realized how far he had fallen. He had built Caldwell Enterprises from the ground up, but his arrogance, pride, and prejudices had led him to the brink of destruction. He had underestimated his employees, and worse, he had underestimated John. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. He looked up to see John standing there, dressed in his usual calm attire, nothing extravagant, just a simple suit that exuded confidence without the need for flashy displays. "Adam, I know this isn't easy," John said, his voice steady but compassionate. "But I've been where you are now, and I'm offering you a chance to come back, not as a CEO, but as part of the team. A new beginning. A chance to rebuild, to learn humility, and to start again." Adam stared at him, the weight of the offer sinking in. He had lost everything: his position, his company, his pride. Yet here was John, offering him a chance. It was a humbling moment. "I don't deserve this," Adam said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "After everything I did, how I treated you, my employees, my arrogance, I don't deserve a second chance." John smiled gently. "That's the point, Adam. It's not about deserving. It's about growth, learning from mistakes, and moving forward. We all have our flaws. It's what we do with them that matters." Adam felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at John. This man who had once cleaned his floors was now offering him a way out of his own self-made prison. His pride made the decision difficult, but deep down he knew this was his only path to redemption. With a heavy sigh, Adam stood up, extending his hand. "I'll take the chance, John. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." John shook his hand firmly. "Good. Welcome back to the team, Adam. This time we build together." As John sat in his new office, a corner window providing a view of the bustling city, he couldn't help but smile. He had come a long way from scrubbing floors at Caldwell Enterprises to owning the building where it all started. But his journey wasn't just about the success he had achieved, it was about what he had learned and how far he had come, both as a person and a leader. John leaned back in his chair, his thoughts drifting back to those long nights when he had cleaned the floors, dreamed of something more, and tirelessly worked to turn those dreams into reality. He thought about the moments of doubt, the struggles, the moments when he felt like giving up. But he never did. He had grown not only as a businessman but also as a mentor and community leader. John knew that success was about lifting others up, not just about personal gain. He spent his free time helping young people who were just starting out, sharing his knowledge and experiences. He helped those who had once been in his shoes, people who were told they couldn't make it, who were overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. One afternoon, as he walked through the hallways of the building, he saw a group of employees gathered around a table, discussing a new project. John stopped and smiled, knowing that this company wasn't just about making money, it was about making a difference. He had transformed the culture, and now, everyone had a voice. He took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. His once small apartment, filled with books and business plans, had now become a testament to his hard work and determination. But it wasn't just the material success that mattered. It was the people whose lives he had touched, the employees he had promoted, the young entrepreneurs he had mentored, and the communities he had invested in. John's journey wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder, it was about proving that no matter where you started, you could rise above, break the chains of limitation, and achieve greatness. And now he had the platform to inspire others to do the same. The final scene took place on a bright morning during the company's annual meeting. John stood in front of a packed conference room, the energy in the air electric. Employees, clients, and partners had gathered to hear the new CEO speak, someone who had transformed the company from the ground up. John stepped up to the podium, his eyes scanning the room. He had learned that leadership wasn't about grand speeches or flashy presentations. It was about the heart, the genuine desire to help others succeed, to build something lasting, and to share in the triumphs of those around you. As I stand here today, I think about where I started, John began, his voice strong yet filled with humility. I started as a janitor. My job was to clean up after others. But I didn't let that define me. I knew that with hard work, perseverance, and a willingness to learn, I could change my future. He paused for a moment, looking out at the faces in the crowd. But I didn't do it alone. I had help. I had mentors, I had people who believed in me, and most importantly, I had the belief that no matter who you are, no matter what your job is today, you can always make your dreams a reality. John smiled as he looked around the room, filled with people who had supported him on this journey. I'm not here to tell you it's going to be easy. It won't be. But what I can tell you is this: if you keep fighting, if you keep learning, if you keep believing in yourself, anything is possible. The room was silent, everyone hanging on to his every word. It wasn't the flashy success story they were used to hearing, it was something deeper, something real. John had lived the struggle, and now he was passing that knowledge on. He finished with a simple but powerful statement: don't ever let anyone tell you what you can't do. Don't let them define you by your past. You are capable of greatness, and I'm proof of that. Now, go out there and make it happen. The applause that followed was deafening. John had not just built a successful business, he had built a legacy. He had become an inspiration, a symbol of resilience, growth, and the power of self-belief. As he left the stage, John's thoughts drifted back to the janitor's broom, the small apartment, and the long nights of struggle. He had fought hard to get to where he was, and now he was helping others do the same. The story of John, the janitor who became the CEO, was not just a story of success. It was a story of transformation, a story of proving that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can rise above and change your destiny.